Hey everyone, it is Grant Winsauer and
Jack Rody.
back here on the Bear Claw cast, and we've got a lot to go over with you today. We've got 15 head coaching candidates to go over, and I'm just gonna say it. Let's just get it out of the way. Everyone, let's calm down about the madness that we've seen on Twitter about interviewing too many candidates because the last time that we did this, we only interviewed three, and it gave us Matt Eberflus. So talk to as many candidates as you want, and I mean there are six interviews that are lined up for this week, and five out of six I like, or we like actually, and we're gonna get into those in a little bit, but but before we get into that, let's talk about the surprising win that the Bears had over the Packers. Were you surprised? How surprised were you is actually the better question, and not were you surprised?
Yeah, I mean, definitely surprised. You don't ever expect to win a game going into Lambeau with how the Bears have been playing in recent
Mm-hmm.
weeks. But I mean, after looking back on it, we're one blocked field goal away from beating the Packers twice this season and
Yeah.
holding the Packers to zero divisional wins. So, if anything, I know I mentioned last week on the podcast my one friend who's a Packers fan. So, I've been happily reminding him this week several times that the Bears and the Packers ended up with the same intra-divisional record. So there's not many things we could take away from this season, but that is definitely one that we have that we can at least kind of, I guess, be happy about that we won one division game. I don't know. Or look for
I
positive.
mean, I mean, it definitely is like a good you know it's good for morale going into 2025. You won your first game of 2025, and then it was against the Packers, which was just the icing on the cake for probably most Bears fans, even though probably most Bears fans were still disappointed because of the season results. But I mean, I gotta say, I mean, for the situation that Caleb Williams walked into with all of his coaching changes and all that stuff, I mean, I really like his stat line for this season. He had over 3,500 passing yards and 20 touchdowns with with only six interceptions. I mean, and then he added another 400 something on the ground, which for a quarterback that doesn't run a lot is a pretty considerable number. So he had over 4,000 all-purpose yards, which is number one on the list for all-purpose yards in terms of Bears. So that's pretty nice. I mean, what are your thoughts on his rookie season?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot has been overblown in the media about just kind of shitting on Caleb Williams, for lack of a better way to put it. I think a
Sure.
little bit too much. People have been very quick to point out how much potential guys like Drake may have, and then obviously pointing to the success that the teams of both Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels have had as rookies. But when you look back at the history of first round rookie quarterback draft picks, especially guys who are drafted number one overall like Caleb, that team
Uh-huh.
success usually does not follow in year one of their stint. And
Uh-huh.
there's so many things that Caleb did this year that we can look at in a positive light. Obviously, Sunday ended up being his first true game winning drive of his young career. But there were several
Uh-huh.
other times where Caleb led them down the field to a game winning
Uh-huh.
drive, and either something like the first Packers game happened or the Commanders game happened where they get a Hail Mary shortly
Yeah.
afterwards. So I think the one thing I would say is that sure, there were some growing pains for Caleb, and he maybe didn't perform exceptionally in every single game. But just comparing it to the way that a lot of the way the Bears lost games in the past, it seemed like Justin Fields would have an untimely fumble or an interception in the fourth
Sure.
quarter. And I felt like no matter what, Caleb gave us good play in the fourth quarter of games, as well as in the red zone. I know he finished with, I think, 12 touchdowns to zero interceptions in the red zone this season, which
I
is
think it was
always a good
I think
thing.
it was 10. I think it was 10.
10.
I think it was
Yeah,
10.
it's always a good thing for young quarterbacks to take care of the ball in the red zone. And we also, I mean, Caleb had a top 5 streak in NFL history of consecutive pass attempts without an interception. So while the
Uh-huh.
season results, like you mentioned, aren't there, I think there are a lot of positives you can take away from the season.
And honestly, actually, I want to comment on something that you said about the uh, the streak with the without an interception. Personally, I think that if Caleb didn't throw that interception against that was against the Seahawks, right?
Yeah, the one at the end of the game.
Yeah, the one at the end of the game. If he didn't throw that one, I personally believe he would have broken Aaron Rodgers' record. I
Yeah, I mean,
personally
and that and
believe.
that and that was just a ball he had to throw because they were like at the
Right.
end of the like
You
that's not
don't have
a
a choice. It was 6-3. You're trying to win. I mean, you know, it's all hope and prayer at that point, but you have to do it.
yeah.
So before we get into the long, long, long list of head coaching candidates that are expected to interview, and we're gonna hand out our season awards. I'll go first. For me, the team MVP was Jalen Johnson. He was the sole person to make the Pro Bowl, which I understand because after Matt Eberflus left, thank God he left. But after Eberflus left, this defense just went totally downhill. But Jalen Johnson has always been that lockdown corner that we expect him to be, and he keeps proving that he is going to be a vital part of this team in the future. Who is your team MVP?
So my team MVP, excuse me, I'm gonna give it to Caleb. I know it's kind of a soft pick.
Mm-hmm.
Quarterback is usually always going to be the team MVP, but like we just mentioned, I thought Caleb did a lot of stuff right in year one, and there wasn't much. Obviously, he's going to improve as a player and continue progressing. But when you put up over 4,000 all-purpose yards in your rookie year and have nearly a 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, I find
Mm-hmm.
it hard not to give you the team MVP. And I do love the Jalen Johnson pick, and I'll mention him a little bit later on, as well as another guy for Defensive Player of the Year. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just hard to be that valuable as a cornerback to be able to be the team MVP, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. I considered doing Caleb for team MVP too, but when you suggested that we should do this, you put best rookie on there, and
Yeah,
there's not we had a very small rookie draft class, and I would have picked between Caleb or Rome, and Caleb had I mean, Rome had a very respectable rookie season for a wide receiver 3, but when your quarterback is passing the ball, 20, 30 times a game, you're bound to put up some numbers. I
yeah.
um so that's a little spoiler there. He's my rookie of the year for the team at least. Um but my defensive player of the year, I I could have given this to Jalen Johnson and then done Caleb for team MVP, but I didn't. So I'm gonna give my defensive player of the year to Kevin Byard because he was very consistent in his first year as safety for the Bears. So I really like him. I hope he's back next year. I mean, he's on a 2-year deal, but it's also about who the next head coach is and how he will be utilized. And sometimes, they let go of veteran players because they aren't going to fit in their system. I hope that's not the case because he was a very respectable player, but we'll see. Who is your defensive player of the year?
So I think I would have to give my defensive player of the year to Jalen Johnson, but since you already talked about him a little bit for team MVP, I want to talk a little bit about Kyler Gordon, just because he's probably my favorite player on the Bears defense and
Sure.
someone who I think deserves mentioning. Uh, Kyler Gordon was 20th among quarterbacks in PFF just grade overall at the cornerback position, and that's over 223 different qualifying players. And actually, Kyler Gordon And I think anyone who watches Bears games consistently can kind of pick up on this just from watching. But he actually had 9 quarterback pressures this year, which was second out of all defensive backs in the NFL
Wow,
this
I didn't know
year.
that.
So he also, I mean, 50, nearly 50, 53 solo tackles this year. I just thought that Kyler Gordon is a guy, when you watch games, is consistently flying around the defense from that nickel corner spot. And I think that he's a guy who's going to continue to grow in this defense and hopefully will be around for a long time. So I just wanted to give him a quick shout out.
No, I mean, I love it. And honestly, he would be one of the very, there's not a lot of players up for him, but he would be one of the like two people I would consider giving a contract extension to because of how well he played this season. I don't want to give out like a year and a yearly and a number thing, but I definitely think he should be considered for a contract extension. Now, it Brian Poles met with the media yesterday and stated that they're not going to do contract extensions until the next is in the building, which is the right way to do it. And I mean, it, if I was a betting man, unless the choice is Ben Johnson, we know the head coach in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Um, Now, I will say let us both be on the record and let's just say we want it to be Ben Johnson, but there's something it's something about being a Bears fan. We just expect them to screw it up somehow in some way and hire the wrong coach or the one that has 1 year of experience of doing something. So we'll see how it goes. But who is your rookie of the year for the Bears?
Yeah, so kind of going to go with a lame choice again here with Caleb, kind of doubling up with my
It
team MVP.
it makes
I did,
sense.
I mean, I did want to mention Torrey Taylor. I mean, Caleb told him he wasn't going to punt a lot this year, and he was indeed very wrong. Torrey Taylor did punt a lot this year, but he had the highest net punting average and gross punting total yards for a Bears punter in team history. So if you're going to spend a fourth round pick on a punter, you better hope they're good. And Torrey Taylor was good. So if any
Mm-hmm.
young Bears fans out there are looking to buy a Bears jersey, I think Torrey Taylor might be a good option. He'll be around for a while if you're super into punting and anything like that.
You know what? I like that. I like that. I like your thought process there. And then the final one that I put in the script was most improved player of this for this season, and my choice was Jervon Dexter. He had 2.5 sacks last year, I believe. I looked it up yesterday, and I think that's what it said. And he had 6 this year, so that I mean that's a pretty drastic improvement. And he had 20 total tackles his rookie year, and he had 33 this year. A little bit of an increase there, but rush D tackles aren't on the field that often, so they don't get much solo tackles. But going from 2.5 to 6 sacks, that's a pretty drastic improvement in my opinion. I hope that he is around on this team for a long time after in the next couple of years. So who would be your defensive most improved player on the team, Jack?
Yeah, so I think that's a great pick with Dexter, and I'm actually going to go with the guy who was drafted one round ahead of him by the Bears in the draft in 2022, and that would be Darnell Wright. I thought Darnell Wright was pretty much the lone bright spot on the offensive line this year.
He is. He
Uh,
is.
he was a, he was above average in both run and passing grades for PFF. It was actually the seventh best or not pass blocking, seventh best run blocking offensive tackle, either right or left tackle by PFF this year. He was 16th out of 141 qualified offensive tackles in overall PFF grade, and once again, that's including both left and right tackles. And I think that Ryan Poles has caught a little bit of flack, especially when it happened for passing on Jalen Carter. But when that resulted in the combination of Darnell Wright, who we've seen a lot of improvement from, as well as getting Javon Dexter in the second round of that draft, both of whom were our most improved players for the Bears this year, I think that as we look back on that 2022 draft, or is that 2023 draft? I apologize.
Yeah, 2023.
Uh, the Bears will. I think Bears fans will look back on that draft a little more fondly as it ages more and more.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, I love your pick. Also, I mean, you're right. He was literally the lone bright spot on the offensive line. I mean, but there is one player that I actually want to talk about a little bit that I would expect back for a backup position after he was a pretty uh, well contributed player on a very short contract, and that was the guard Matt Pryor. I think he's you know a little. I think he's uh, a little rough on experience. He doesn't have a lot of experience because he's pretty young. But I
He's a
mean,
good he's a good swing guard to
yeah,
have as like a
I
sixth
would
offensive lineman.
definitely consider bringing him back to be a backup to whoever is hopefully the revamped offensive line after this offseason. Um, let's talk about Ryan Poles' end of the year press conference. I heard some things I liked and some things that I didn't like. Let's start with the things I liked. The things I liked include the fact that the Bears will not use consultants except for background checks, and I think that actually is a good idea to use consultants for background checks because I mean, you you want to make sure that the coaches that you're interviewing are good people and actually you hear good things from their previous organizations and all that stuff. um I mean, I'm glad that they're not using a hiring committee for the search. I mean, granted, the search is probably a little large right now with 15 people, but really there's probably about 10 people that they're actually heavily considering in the search, and they're just getting as much information as they can. And here's a quote that I mean, he took responsibility for his accomplishments not being enough, and that shows that he is taking accountability. Here's what he said. Quote, I'm proud of several things, but I'm not here to celebrate those accomplishments. I'm here to tell everyone that those accomplishments are not good enough. I'm focused now on creating bigger and better successes. I'm focusing I'm focused on correcting the mistakes that I created, and I'm focused on winning the trust of the fan base. Oh, did you get kicked out?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. So I mean, he's taking responsibility for not some of the things that he missed out on. I really admire that. He also said, "I have to take responsibility as a leader of football, as the leader of football operations for the losses, and make sure we don't make those mistakes again." Um, that's another thing that I like. Uh, he's showing that he wants to be a good leader. Um, Things that I don't like from the press conference is when he was asked about the lack of help on the offensive line. Uh, Quote, just because it's the philosophy doesn't mean there's answers at those positions for you to take. And my response to that is, but when you bring in the best QB prospect that you've had in the last 15 years, you have to do everything in your power to bring in talent to protect him. Hopefully, the next coach, whoever it is, will emphasize that in the interview process. But what are your thoughts on that, Jack? Before I go into actually what Kevin Warren and George McCaskey said in their press conferences.
Yeah, well, it definitely seems like Ryan Poles will be around for the search as well as for the next tenure of the next head coach. That question has sort of been answered from our last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, The tone of this press conference is definitely a whole lot different from we're taking the North and we're never giving it back. And I think that a little bit of humility was probably needed for Ryan Poles after the way this season has gone. I definitely do appreciate the fact that he's taking accountability for it. I think Bears fans everywhere were pretty uh, upset after that Lions game on Thanksgiving when Matt Eberflus defended his decisions with the play clock and said that he liked how they went about it. Just because, I mean, we know you're lying. Like, it's okay to be wrong sometimes. We're all human, but take accountability for it. So uh, I get what he's saying about the offensive line, particularly for the draft. You don't want to reach on guys that you wouldn't necessarily take at that position. But like you said, that is the one glaring weakness of this team, and you have to protect your most prized possession, and that is Caleb Williams. So hopefully, the way this offseason works, there are guys that Ryan Poles deems worthy at whatever price or draft pick that they are going to be priced at to go and take and help Caleb, because
Mm-hmm.
we can't go another season with that offensive line that we had this year.
Actually, I want to comment on real quick on what you said about the draft and free agency for offensive linemen. You know, I would only say that I would comfortably take two offensive linemen in the first round, and that's Will Campbell and Calvin Banks. But the rest, the rest of the top end guys are, you know, rounds 2 and 3 people, which we have two in the second round, and 71 in the third round or something like that. We have 39 and 42 in the second round, and then I think it's 71 in the third round. So I mean, if the Bears were to take a guy like Abdul Carter or someone like him at number 10 in April, I would expect or at least hope that the two second round picks would be um, offensive linemen or offensive uh, lineman uh, positions. Because you got guys like Tyler Booker is someone I would look at from Alabama. Um, And but we'll do mock drafts in a couple weeks. Let's get back to what we have in the script. But what would your thoughts be on that? If that was the route that they went.
Yeah, I definitely think, or at least hope, that we'll have the opportunity to draft either Campbell or Banks at that 10 position. It's really going to depend on how other teams view the quarterbacks at the top of this
Mm-hmm.
draft, which I think as we get closer to the draft, it's going to end up more like the Malik Willis draft, where we don't even see a first round quarterback rather
That's
than
possible.
three or four guys being taken in the top 10. We'll have to see. But
I
like you
mean,
said, we'll continue to get into that as we get closer to the draft. So it's hard to think about it now when we have free agency to come, so we don't really know what teams' needs are 100% right
sure,
now.
sure. But um, so uh, when Warren was asked in response to Poles being here long term, and this was his answer. Um, Quote: When we say long term, a year is a lifetime. I, I think we can speak for everyone that a year is not a lifetime. It feels like we celebrate the new year, and 5 years or 5 minutes later, we're celebrating it again. Um, I mean, I personally believe that what they're doing is they're going to extend polls, but they're waiting to see how long the next coach wants to be here. Like, what does he want in how long does he want his contract? That way, they can line that up and all that stuff. That is what I expect. What are your thoughts on that, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just like I mentioned last podcast, worries me a little bit about just continually cycling between head coach, GM, and quarterback. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we don't run the Bears, so not much we can do. I don't
Right,
know
right.
how much there else is to say about it, to be honest.
Yeah. And then uh, George McGaskey. then went on to say this when being asked about GM and head coach alignment. I don't, and this is a quote, I don't think that's a key factor. Um, but during his time as the chairman of the Bears, ever since old man George McCaskey passed away, or yeah, right. I'm sorry. Um, he he's gone through either six GMs and four head coaches, or four GMs and six head coaches. But that's way too many. So you need to get this right, and you need to line up the GM and the head coach for as long as you can, because it matters. I mean, I can't believe that he's he's coming out and saying that that doesn't matter. I mean, this he sounds like a fan when he's saying that, and not the owner. I mean, look at Mike Tomlin and whoever owns the Steelers. I mean, and even before that, they've had like three head coaches in the last 40 years, or something.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean
it's ridiculous. Um, I mean, oh my god. Ugh. Ugh. I
let's
mean,
just move on. Enough
yeah,
of
let's
not
do it. Let's yeah.
not worth belaboring over.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're gonna get into the head coach candidates that are confirmed to have interviews. This list is very long, which is a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because they will have a lot of information from the coaching candidates. It's a bad thing because you can't get to know the coaches on a deeper level. So let's start with tier one. We have 15 requests for interviews. So I put five in tier one, five in tier two, and five in tier three. Um, and my tier one coaches are Ben Johnson, Todd Monken, Joe Brady, Brian Flores, and David Shaw. Um, we have talked about Ben Johnson enough. He is the belle of the ball of the coaching cycle. Um, Todd Monken is a name I really like. He's been with the Georgia Bulldogs during their two national championship runs, and has led Lamar Jackson to two MVP awards. I like him as a choice because he tailors his offense to the QB's strengths, and that's what we need for Caleb. The bad thing is, or I mean, this is a good and a bad thing for me. He is 58 years old. It's a bad thing because if he is the choice, he'd be 63 when his contract is over, and I don't know how long he would want to coach after that. But I mean, uh, another candidate that we have on our list is Pete Carroll, and he's 10 years older than him. So, I mean, he could be here longer than I think. I'm just, age is a factor for me here, but with age comes more experience, so that's a good thing. And then next is Joe Brady. He's less experienced at play calling than Ben Johnson, but he is doing more with less in Buffalo, and is the play caller responsible for Josh Allen's MVP level season. I mean, I really like him as an option, but at the same time, maybe with less experience comes, less likelihood of that happening. Uh, Brian Flores has connections to Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren. Flores and Poles were at Boston College together, and Kevin Warren was with the Minnesota Vikings a few years ago, and has gotten nothing but good remarks about Flores from his previous organization. Uh, he's Flores has been a head coach before with the Miami Dolphins, but he went through 4 OCs in 3 years, so that's why I'm hesitant. But with him working with Kevin O'Connell, maybe he would bring along better offensive coaches. Um, and the last one is a little unorthodox for me, but I like this, and that's David Shaw. I did not expect his name to be in the running for the um, the head coach job, and who knows? Maybe this is just an interview to you know figure out how to fix your organization. He is currently the senior personnel executive for the Broncos, but he was the former Stanford head coach and developed Andrew Luck and posted a 96-54 record during his run in college. He would check both boxes of experience, of head coach experience and successful offensive scheme. Uh, so we'll see how the interview goes, but that's my tier one list. What's your tier one list, Jack?
Yeah, so I think I'm just going to stick with the tiers you have just for sake of simplicity. But I kind of want to, for each of the tiers you've made and are going to read off, I kind of want to just focus on one or two guys that
Sure.
I have strong feelings on per list. Uh, the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
name from this tier one group is Todd Monken. He was a name we mentioned earlier in the season, right when Eberflus got fired.
Uh
And I
huh.
was kind of disappointed that he wasn't getting much headway as we heard more and more guys that the Bears could potentially be interested in. But I think now that the season has ended and we're hearing his name come up again, he's a guy I would just love to have in Chicago. He's a Wheaton guy from the area, been
Yeah.
around a lot of success recently. Uh, I'm just a huge fan of everything the Ravens have done offensively in the last 2 years, and I think that they're going to have a good playoff run this year and potentially be the team to finally knock off the Chiefs. As far as a name I'm not too keen on in this group, I think Brian Flores. I keep flip flopping in my head about him, but I don't know if you saw what Ryan Fitzpatrick had to say this last week or so
I did.
about
I
his
did
time in
see that.
Miami. It sounds like he alienated himself from not only the players on his roster, but also his assistant coaches. And that's not to say that he can't have grown and learned from that situation and do a better job a second time around. But it is just a big red flag as far as Brian Flores goes when you have a young quarterback in Caleb Williams, who the number one job of this organization right now is to get the most out of him that they can.
I agree. Uh, um, I mean, I like your points. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I just, I put him in tier one because of the fact that he has connections to the both of our top guys in the brass. I'm very interested to see how that goes in terms of the interview. So we'll see how it goes. But maybe maybe he's not being considered, but they're just interviewing as many people as possible. So for tier two, um, I I actually forgot to put him in here. So I'm gonna add him real quick. Even with his age, with um how uh disciplined he is, I will put Pete Carroll in tier one just because of how well ran the Seahawks were when he was the leading man there. I don't know if he gets seriously considered, but his interview is tomorrow, and let's just get this out of the way. The Bears are interviewing Mike Vrabel and Drew Petzing today, and then Pete Carroll is tomorrow, and then Matt Kafka and Aaron Glenn are, I think, Saturday. The only one that hasn't been like figured out yet is Ben Johnson, but he will interview any day from Thursday to Saturday. because that's the timeline that the Lions gave both Aaron Glenn and um, Ben Johnson. So hopefully we'll be able to find some information on how those interviews go on the internet. I wouldn't expect a lot of information, but I would like to find some. Uh, and then Mike Vrabel, or no, I said Mike Vrabel. But all 5 out of those 6 candidates I really like, and the only one that I don't really like is Matt Kafka because I read somewhere that he's going to be getting an interview as a favor for Ryan Poles. So I don't think he seriously gets considered. But I love this first round of interviews. I have to say, all of them are strong, strong choices. But starting with tier 2, I put Mike Vrabel in tier 2 because of the fact that Mike Vrabel is most likely going to be hired by the Patriots. He is interviewing with us today, Mike Vrabel. Um, but Vrabel is interviewing with the uh, uh, Patriots tomorrow, and I would not be surprised if they lock him up as the next head coach by Monday, because the Patriots already interviewed Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich, and those are 2 names that are on nobody else's list, and they are both minority candidates, so they already comply with the uh, uh, Rooney Rule, so they can hire Mike Vrabel like as soon as he gets in the building. Which I think they'll still go through an interview, but I have a strong hunch that they won't let him leave the building, or let him leave the building with an offer in hand at least. So tier 2 for me is Mike Vrabel, Drew Petzing, and Aaron Glenn. Um, I had Mike McCarthy in this list, but McCarthy or Dallas denied our request to interview Mike McCarthy, so he's most likely going to be in Dallas next season. So I'm glad that we got denied that interview because I don't like Mike McCarthy. Um, And I mean, Aaron Glenn, I like his defense. He's doing a lot of strong things there, but I'm very interested to see what his offensive plans would be. Um, what are your thoughts on the tier 2 list?
Yeah, I think out of the guys I would be most happy with, this might surprise some people. I actually do like Aaron Glenn as a candidate. I think that Detroit's done a lot of good things on defense this year, especially with how much they've been ravaged by injuries. And we know how much Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson contribute to the offensive side of that team. So I think that he would be a sneaky candidate that maybe Bears fans wouldn't be too excited about, but I would be okay with if he were the next Bears head coach. As far as candidates, I'm not super thrilled about. Uh, Drew Petzing isn't a name I was too familiar with until like the last week or so, as he's been mentioned for this Bears job.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
He has
I just don't. I get he has connections, and like I get that, but
Mm-hmm.
the Bears have talked about all these things they care about for next head coaching candidate, leader of men, previous head coaching experience is something they've mentioned that
Yeah,
is important. Success at their previous jobs.
and I
Drew
wouldn't
Petzing has
say.
been the offensive coordinator of a team that hasn't made the playoffs the last 3 years and really sputtered on offense the last half of this year. He's never been a head coach. I know he's highly regarded by coaches around the league, but like, what? Like, I mean, I don't want to sound uneducated here. I'm sure he's a great coach, and I'm sure if
Mm-hmm.
he were to get a head coaching job somewhere, maybe he'd be great and he'll make me eat my words. But like, I know you mentioned that Bears fans should not be so upset that we're interviewing this many candidates, but Petzing, as well as some of the guys we're going to mention here in tier 3, I do
Yeah,
have a slightly different opinion from you on, just because I I get interviewing a ton of guys, but some of these guys you just know you're not going to hire. So what are you doing? Like,
there are about five coaching candidates on our 15 uh uh candidate list that you can basically cross off. I mean,
yeah,
I
like,
don't. Some of them, I'm completely with you. I don't understand why they're getting an interview. Drew
and
Petzing
it's fine.
is
It's fine as long as you don't miss out on one of the top candidates because you're
yes,
wasting time interviewing
yes,
these guys.
yes, yes, yes.
Like if you get them out of the way right away, and like we got to wait for Johnson anyways, fine. But if we miss out on Joe Brady or Todd Monken or something because we were too
Mm-hmm.
busy interviewing Drew Petzing, I'm gonna be a little peeved off to say the least.
I have to say, I don't think we're gonna miss out necessarily on a top candidate because surprisingly there are only wait, is it six now with Antonio? Yeah, it's six head coaching.
Bears, Saints, Jets, Patriots, Raiders, Jags. Yeah, six.
Yeah, there's only six. I thought there was going to be you know 8 to 9. I thought the Giants would start over completely. I don't know why they didn't because their owner has expressed that he's tired of waiting. Which I mean, when you've uh, gone downhill tremendously after having Eli Manning in terms of success, I don't blame you. I expected the Jaguars to clean house, but they fired Doug Peterson, but they didn't fire their general manager, which I don't really think was a great idea to keep him on as GM. He wasn't that he. I mean, he's drafted a lot of good people, but you got to get the coach right, man.
Yeah,
You hire Urban Meyer. That was a one and done deal, right?
yeah,
And then you at the time Doug Peterson looked like a great hire because he was the Super Bowl winning head coach, the offensive success man. Uh, but after 3 years he's out. Now you're looking at looking at options. Actually, it's important to note that so I haven't looked, but as of recording this, I haven't heard that Ben Johnson has officially accepted an interview with the Jaguars. He has officially accepted interviews with the Bears and the Patriots. But again, we'll see if the Patriots job is really open. I personally believe it's open for Mike Vrabel. And I mean, everyone is saying that, which is great for us because that would mean that his only other interview would be the Bears, and he has publicly said if he takes an interview, that's a job that he's willing to take. And if he, I mean that's big.
yeah,
Um, but so let's get into tier three, and this is ridiculous because there's a lot
yeah.
of
We'll go through this quickly so I can. I'm kind of excited to crap on a couple of these names,
yeah.
but that's okay.
So so lists in tier three are or names in tier three are Mike Kafka, which I've read that Poles is doing Kafka a favor. Uh, so I don't think he gets seriously considered. Arthur Smith, please no. Anthony Weaver, another please no. And Thomas Brown. And then um, I think they have an interview with Vance Joseph, but I don't. I'm not sure on that, but I that's another please no for me. I mean, all of these guys. I mean, for me, these the two we have to interview two outside candidates for the Rooney Rule, and I think that's why we requested for Weaver and um, Vance Joseph because they're both minority candidates outside of our organization, but the rest are all not minority candidates. So I mean, the, tier 3 is just all bad coaches. I mean,
I just like my whole thing is like I feel like the Bears are doing Ryan Poles a favor by letting him stick around and make this net head coaching hire. Why are we letting Ryan Poles do favors to his buddies, specifically when his buddy was the offensive coordinator for one of the bottom three offenses in football this year? Like,
mhm,
I'm okay with interviewing and casting a wide net with a lot of people, but like, really? Like,
not
that's what
this.
we're gonna waste a day on that? Like, I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
think I think it's so silly. I mean,
it is a little bit too
it's I think clearly three coaches was way too short of a search, and I think 15 is way too long. Interview 7 to 8 guys who you could realistically seeing yourself hire. If you don't see yourself hiring Mike Kafka, and if they do, I think they need to go to the doctor and get their brains checked.
much.
Like, what are you wasting your time on? I just, it's whatever. I mean,
I personally, I believe that they actually have 6 to 8 people that they're actually considering, and you know some of these are just to get information, or maybe see if they would make a good position coach. Now let me say this: I do not I am not for that. I would actually rather interview people that you are actually interested in as your head coach, and not, come into the interview and say, "Hey, what if we brought you in as QB coach, or offensive coordinator? Or what would you do for Caleb, or what stupid stuff like that?" I mean, it's just 15 is a little ridiculous. I would hope by next week we have, you know, this list down to 8 people. But that's the hard part, because
yeah,
I mean we're only allowed to interview people that either have the buy, or haven't, or are done with their season, which their interviews are. So it is, um, it's complying with that, but still, it's like crazy. Like,
yeah.
I, I don't. I think 15 is too much. I do agree with
But
you. I mean,
yeah,
um, I let's see what else we got really quick. Um, so I mean, we talked about the 6 interviews that were lined up. You know, with the long list, um there's 15, but I think 9 out of 15 of them are offensive head coaches, or offensive minded coaches. So I at least believe that the choice will be an offensive mind. Let's just hope it's a stronger offensive mind. Um, it's gonna be interesting. I don't know. I mean, I really hope that this list, trickles down in the next week. Um, I think Poles definitely will have his favorite, you know, for the next head coach. But if it were up to the fans, I think we need to narrow it down to a top 5, or in other words, who will get a second interview, gets his second interviews. I think that it will be Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, Todd Monken, and because of your comment, and about what Ryan Fitzpatrick said, I'm actually gonna cross Flores off of the top 5 and top 3 list. I would want, maybe, uh, now I can't even think about who we talked about. Damn it. So I'll put now.
We'll
Um,
make it we'll make it a top four.
yeah, let's make it a top four. And then for the top, if I were to do a top three, I would want Joe or Ben Johnson, Todd Monken, or Joe Brady.
Yeah.
Who are your top five, and who are your top three? Jack.
I would say my top five is pretty similar. I would say Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, Todd Munkin, the same as you. And then I would probably have, I mean, I know he's going to get the Patriots job, but I would still throw Vrabel in there. And
Mm-hmm.
then for a fifth realistic option, I would probably go Aaron Glenn, although I think the Bears go in the offensive direction for head coach. And
Uh-huh.
then my top three would be the same as yours. I think those are just the three best candidates that are on the market, and I don't think there's much
Yeah.
new needed to. I think I mean, part of me kind of leans. I just, for some reason, Todd Monken seems like such a great option to me. But we'll have to see as the search gets narrowed. And I know we won't know for sure if it's Johnson or Monken. We'll have to wait a little bit if they're still coaching in the playoffs. But we still like the Vikings with Kevin O'Connell. Like they knew he was going to be their next head coach, and everybody knew. They just had to wait until after the Super Bowl to make it official when Kevin O'Connell was
Yeah,
still coaching
and
with the Rams. So we might know sooner than the actual contract is signed. So
yeah, I believe that it was reported like the day before the Super Bowl that Kevin O'Connell was the choice and he agreed to be the coach. He just hadn't signed the contract until after. Which I
yeah,
mean, which I'm totally fine with. If we find out, a month from now, which is February 8th, because it's January 8th, the day of recording this. The Super Bowl is February 9th, I believe. If Monken or Johnson are our choice, I mean, if we find out, around then that they're, the choice, but they haven't signed the contract, as long as we find out, I'm fine.
yeah, same here.
Because if that's how it went with O'Connell, what's to say it's not going to happen with us? So I
Yeah,
mean, we we still have a ways to go until we find out, but I mean, I'm I think Bears fans are happy that we are hopefully in the part of the off season where we fix things, and hope is a big word because just with the Bears, how often they screw it up, it's a possibility that they do it again. I hate to we hate to say that, but it's it's completely possible. Um, and I mean, I just want to know, what the next coach's plan is. I can't wait to hopefully hear this. Uh, but with that, we will probably be back on Saturday to discuss how all of the interviews that are lined up so far for each coaching option went. Hopefully, we will be able to find some information online about how the 6 interviews went. This is Grant Winsauer and
Jack Rhodey.
of the Bear Claw Cast, and the off season has begun. All Bears fans out there, pray that the Bears brass get this hire right because we absolutely need to. And we will see you Saturday, and have a good rest of your week.
See everybody.